This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Brought to you by the British Columbia Personal Training Institute. Learn how to train, gain, and retain clients. Visit bcpti.ca. On today's episode, we welcome Christine Conti, who embodies the Yes You Can mindset. Christine is the CEO of CONTI, an international fitness educator, chronic disease wellness specialist, and won the esteemed Idea World 2023 Fitness Instructor of the Year. In this episode, Christine opens up about her story of a life-changing diagnosis at the age of 30 and how it propelled this former investment banker and English teacher on a mission to prove that anything is possible. Beyond the life of a CEO, Christine is a best-selling author, podcast host, co-founder of REINVENTING the Woman International, and a 3-time IRONMAN. Before we get to her inspirational tale, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. Plus, we're continuing our gym and wellness haven tours that include inspiring founder stories. We love to keep in touch, so find us on Instagram at All Things Fitness and Wellness. I'm your host, Chrissy Van, and this is ATFW. Okay, Christine, we are coming off the heels of such an invigorating and inspiring event. And of course, you were at IDEA, recognized by your peers, giving us this inspirational talk. We were just speaking before we got started here. I think everyone left that vibrating high, and I'm just so thrilled for you to be here. So first of all, thank you for spending the time.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I love it. This is my shine. This is my joy. Anytime that I can get in front of, more audiences and share some love and get a little yes you can mindset, I am all in. So I thank you.
Yeah, you kind of highlight one of the most important things in life, saying yes to the things. And that's exactly what you did. And it doesn't surprise me when I looked back at your bio, got to learn more about your story from doing a little digging here, that you have had such success because you seem to have harnessed that athlete mindset from a young age. I know that you played collegiate volleyball. So talk to me about where physical activity kind of entered your life.
So I am the youngest of 3, and my 2 older sisters were always into athletics. And of course, I idolized my older sisters, and they actually, all 3 of us played volleyball in college. And what's so funny is that my dad was a big athlete in high school and very athletic. And my mother, not so much, like not at all athletic. And we always say that my dad must have been one hell of an athlete, is what we always say. And it's great to have that dynamic, but I just, whatever my sisters did, I wanted to do. So from a very young age, my sisters are a little bit older than I am. So when I was 4, I was already in gyms watching my sisters play volleyball and dragged all over the United States watching them play in college. And it's what I wanted. I wanted that. And, at a young age, I knew I wanted to do something in college. And eventually, it was a lot of hard work. And I begged my parents when I was in 5th grade if I could try out for a club team, and much to their, I think I just was relentless. And they were like, oh my gosh, let's just shut her up. I made a club team, and, gradually over the years, it became more and more intense. But the club I played for was one of the top clubs on the East Coast of the United States. So it was very intense. And our coaches were, they taught you the winning mindset, which I don't necessarily agree with every coaching tactic.
Fair.
But they really had a tactic where they ripped you down. And because they ripped you down, I almost think of it as, I never went to boot camp, but like I think of what I hear about it, whereas they really rip you down to a point of, you're going to be okay, but we're teaching you to win. We're programming you to win, to be resilient, to get back up. And that, I think, really helped me in the long haul of life, having that foundation of that, and also dealing with the trials of growing up and all the things and all the the hardships that all of us go through in different ways. that really was my foundation, with that type of mindset. When I go back to think of some of it.
You touch on a good point, because I think there is merit to a lot of those philosophies. Exactly as you say, when you build with that strong a foundation, it does equip you in life to take what comes your way. Obviously, I think a lot of coaching and leadership styles have evolved and changed. There's been a lot of learnings because heavy-handed to such a massive degree, maybe a bit too much on one side of the pendulum, but there is value in what you were taught. What I find interesting, though, is you have this amazing love of physical activity, and then you say investment banker and English teacher. How does that happen?
Well, um, growing up, it's, yes, you're doing sports and whatnot, but I had a mother who was like, "That's fun, but what are you going to do? What are you going to be?" And I think, again, my mother instilled really great values into us, and it was always, "I want you to go to school, get a degree, be able to be independent, and not have to rely on anybody." That was what she instilled in us. And for better or for worse, I always say there's always two sides of the story. That success for her, for us, was that we would have a full-time job, that we would have our benefits, that we would have plenty of money so that we could do what we wanted, which equated to, for me, I love movement, I love fitness. And, I was always kind of told that it's not a profession. That's
Yeah,
more
that's
like
your
a
hobby.
hobby.
Yeah.
Right. So, and again, unless I'm going to go into physical therapy or whatnot, which is not really what I thought I wanted. So it was like, all right, well, go be a big business woman, be a CEO, it was like, have this powerful job, because then you're going to be like, I made it. And I did. I actually majored in business and English in college. I did take all the electives of exercise science and psychology and every single yoga and movement and you name it. I took it as electives because, I snuck into some of these classes with like kinesiology. But it wasn't my major, because I was going to be in banking. I was going to make it, wear my suit. And you know what? It was great. I lived in New York City for a little bit. The money was awesome, but I felt like, I'm not going to sit behind a desk. This isn't me. I would like be looking at the clock to like when I could get out so I could go run across town to go take like a dance class, or like go to, Crunch Fitness or Equinox or whatever, like in the city. Um, but I did get my undergraduate degree. I did go and sit for my personal training and my Group X. So I had it. But then I wound up saying, you know what? This isn't for me. I know it's not for me. I know business, but I went and got a master's. I went back to school, got my graduate degree in like leadership and curriculum and education and all the things, so that I could teach, could be an English teacher or professor, but I could also coach, which is part of my love. So I started coaching, and then little by little, I started taking on personal training clients and working and teaching group fitness for all the gyms and getting all the certifications, because I loved it, but it was still a hobby, right? Because I had to, you're not making it unless you have your medical, unless you're going to have a pension, or so I just had this kind of brainwashed in my head that, well, it's always going to be a side hustle.
I think that you speak to something that so many of us were subscribed to growing up, and it's kind of the checkbox life. I always call it like happy
Mhm.
life 2.0 that was advertised. And it was like, okay, so you're going to go to university, college, get your degree, check. And then you're going to get the job, check. And then you're going to get married, check. You're going to have 2.5 children, get your picket fence, and poof, you're going to be the happiest person ever. And for some people, absolutely. Have
Mhm.
at her. It's the dream. What I appreciate about you is that this little nudging inside is something that you didn't silence. Even if you were basically creating building blocks and bridges to where you're at now throughout this entire journey. And let's face it, having the knowledge base as an investment banker and behind you, I'm sure that as well, those skill sets invaluable. When we do life audits, that's the thing that I really appreciate about stories like yourself, to be recognized
so wonderfully by your peers in this fitness landscape, and yet that wasn't the original destination that you were heading. That's fucking awesome, because those pivots, especially when there are expectations placed upon ourselves, you're getting pressure from your family, which means pressure from yourself, pressure from society that it has to look a certain way. And when you're like, nope, I'm going to switch the script here. Love stories like that. So I commend you on that one. But I know the journey has not been without its challenges. When we think of turning 30 years old, this is kind of the highlight of life. We've learned the lessons in our 20s. We know we have more lessons to go, but I would say we're a little wiser, a little more settled, and yet you're then faced with a huge curveball. What happens?
So yeah, all the things. I felt like, hey, banking, check, I made it. Like, oh, okay, I could do this, made it career, right? And then, I knew, thank goodness at an early age, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go this way, and check. Okay, I made it career. Like I always say, like I made it career. I could pay my bills. Like I should be fulfilled, right? Like I should be, and things were okay, right? Like I always say, like things were okay, but I always thought that there was something more. Okay, I don't know what that is, and I know that there's people out there right now that understand that they should be fulfilled with what they're doing, but for some reason they keep searching, right? And well, I was, kind of just going. And yeah, I was age 30 and I started not feeling well, maybe like in my late 20s, but I don't know. I'm a former athlete. Like who
Right.
maybe like this is old age. Like, and that's kind of funny that I say that, but like
Some
maybe
people
this
just cringed
is
in their
getting
souls.
older. This is what happens. Right. Like everyone just died a little bit. Like maybe this is just my arms and my legs and everything hurts and I'm dying, like I don't know. But it was my oldest sister who looked at my hands one day and was like, what is happening? And she's like, what is going on? You need to go to the doctor. They were both really swollen and kind of like disfigured. And I'm like, what? So anyway, I went to the doctor and, I wind up getting all these tests done. And, fast forward, the doctor's like, you have an advanced form of an autoimmune disease. And, don't worry, we'll hit you up with, all this medication, which happens to be, I call it a cocktail. It's like certain forms of chemo and biologics and like steroids and this and that. And,
All
you're giving
quite
yourself
harsh.
shots and you're taking pills. And, I'm sitting there and the doctor's like, oh, don't worry. You have plenty more years of independent living and movement. And I'm like, whoa, like, I'm sorry, time out. Like this, I associate with movement. It makes me happy. It's part of my, I go out, I go for a run and it's like the board meeting in my head. It's my religion. And I just thought to myself, wait, my maternal grandmother was diagnosed with the same disease and she became a quadriplegic because of complications, because it doesn't just affect people think, oh, like, I actually have an advanced special form of rheumatoid arthritis. It affects your joints. Yeah. But it also affects your internal organs. People don't realize that, some of these diseases go a lot further than just, oh, my hands hurt, my fingers hurt, my shoulders. And that's the thing, that's all I could picture was this woman who died when I was 10. I never saw her walk. My mom was the main caretaker. I saw the stress that, financially, physically, emotionally, it took out on the family. And that's what I thought of. Like, I don't want that to be my reality. And there was a lot of, a lot of dark days, I would say. It's like the grieving process you have to go through I'm thinking to myself, my life is never going to be the same.
Well, and that's young. Like, what is the mindset at this point? Especially when you have a doctor that's kind of like, nah, don't worry. And you're like, my lived experience of this is very different from what's coming out of your mouth.
Fitness World's 16 British Columbia high-value, low-cost gyms are committed to helping people reach their fitness goals, whatever those may be. Exercise and movement play a pivotal role in supporting people's overall health and wellness. And it is Fitness World's mission to provide the facilities, services, and amenities to help you achieve your fitness your way. Visit fitnessworld.ca for more information.
Right. And And that was when I actually, switched doctors and found someone that was a little bit more, this is what I want to do. This is who I am. I want to keep moving. And, for me, there was a lot of, there was about 6 months where I was, kind of very sick, felt ill, and I tried to hide it. And, I didn't want to tell people that I was, going through all of this because it seems like a weakness, and you don't want people to treat you differently, and you don't know what's going to happen. And, still to this day, I don't know what my body's going to do in 5 years or 10 years. And, but I knew that going through this kind of, real dark depression and thinking, what are my choices here? Like, I don't want my family to go through this. Am I going to give up? Am I going to, take my own life? I mean, these are things that are very real. And the depression is real. And, I really thought to myself, you're a role model. You know a lot of people. You love fitness, and you have this great ability, and are you going to throw this away? So, your two choices, I go back to Wonder Woman, which I do have a tattoo of Wonder Woman's symbol on the back of my neck.
Incredible.
So I love this saying of, in life, you have two choices. You can do something or you can do nothing. Always choose something. And for me, I felt like, what if this terrible disease was actually my gift? What if this was something that I was supposed to have? Because life is supposed to happen for you, right? Not to you. What if this was something? And what if I could be an advocate? What if I could keep moving and inspire others going through things, whatever the things are in their life, that, yes, you can. Just keep going, keep moving, whatever, like physically, mentally. And that's when I created a bucket list, and I started doing things that I thought, I was afraid of. Like, I literally
What's on this
done
bucket list? Tell me.
Like, I have jumped out of planes. I've run 100-mile race. I've run over 50 marathons. I raised money for charities. Bombshell. I will drop this bombshell on here, even though I have not announced this yet. I work now. I do some work with this group. It's Chris Nickich, who's the first guy who ever had Down syndrome that did a Ironman. And I was his guide 2 months ago for a race. And it was just amazing. Like these heartfelt like experiences I get to do just by putting myself out there. I'm going to actually be guiding the first woman ever with neurodivergence. She has autism at the Ironman World Championships in Kona in October.
Talk about cup filling.
So it's things like starting a podcast, going out and speaking, writing a book, sharing my story that I was too afraid to share some of the things that happened to me in my life, and what it was like stepping into fear. And, I always say, like, I've done a lot of things that are really frightening, and I continue to do things that not necessarily dangerous, like some of them, but they scare you. Picking up the phone and calling someone that you're uncomfortable with, speaking in front of somebody. But the more that you share, the more that other people realize, hey, you know what? Like, maybe I can do this too. And I've realized that my gift in life is to help other people realize that they can too achieve their goals, because I can see in other people what they may not yet be able to see for themselves. And that has been part of my like eye-opening journey of, oh my gosh, like this is like I can see in people who's ready or who has woken up, I call it, and live, because every day is now an adventure. I don't hate it. I wound up leaving my job as a teacher and taking a sabbatical and taking a year and saying, I think that I want to do something bigger. And that was when, the podcast, the reach out to all these people in the industry and fitness, and how do they do it? And just being curious, and how can I help, and raising my hand and saying, I want to be in, what can I do? And I think, like, Chrissy, that was part of my journey of, it's insanity to think of like, oh, you won the award for Idea Instructor of the Year. I'm like, well, who the hell am I? Like, I've just been consistent and elbowed my way into this fitness industry because I want to make bigger changes. I want to change the world. And it's just one day at a time.
You got that because it's a positive ripple that you've been putting out that has reverberated and come to touch you back so that you can be held by a community that appreciates everything that you're putting forward, first of all. And the thing that I think is so incredible about that mindset shift is that it really has it's served you, I'm sure, in this beautiful way that it's filling you up, but it's because it's in service of others and from a really pure notion. Because as you spoke about in those early parts of your career where you're kind of doing the checkbox life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But all of a sudden you have this incident that occurs, that unexpected slam, and it completely allows you to zoom out and see a different perspective. And then you realize this life, I mean, I don't know, everyone has different perspectives of why we're here, what we're doing, all the things. One thing I know for sure, no one knows what they're doing, which means there is a beauty in that. You get to write the script and how you're going to live it. And I think that you are someone that has embraced that mindset and philosophy in this beautiful way. I'm curious to know, though, because you speak to how dark that depression was, and rightfully so. I think anyone that has had, I mean, we think about worry in life, and to me, I'm like, worry is an unnecessary investment. You really have to train your brain to not live in that space over the little things. And quite honestly, it's the stuff that happens out of the blue, unexpected. Those are the things that really shake the ground beneath you. So what tools did you use to achieve such a dramatic mindset shift? Like making the bucket list, doing the things. How did you get out of the hole?
Not quickly, not easily, right? There's number one is that hands down, that you have to surround yourself with people that lift you up, that believe in you, that you're not around and they're pulling you down. There's so many naysayers out there that you come up with an idea and they're like, that's terrible. Don't do that. And you know what? I'm the first one to say it. My mother was very negative. Like, oh my God, what are you doing? This is how I use her voice. Ready?
Please do it.
She's in Brooklyn. She's like, what are you doing, Christine? You're throwing away your education. What, your pension? What about your pension? And I always come back to this because it was like, there's always, and that's your mother, right? Who's like, what are you doing? And there were so many people that were like, are you having like a early midlife crisis? Like, what's happening? And those are the voices that you have to shun. And it's so difficult because it may be coworkers, maybe people around you, maybe friends. And you've got to push them away. That's not the person you need to hang out with right now. I do have a husband who is always really supportive. And he said to me, when I was going to take a sabbatical and literally I'd never worried about money before in my life because I always worked and, whatever. And all of a sudden it was like, all right, well, how are we going to pay the bills? And he was like, you know what? You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. He's like, you've never not figured it out. You'll figure it out. And it was really important. It wasn't like a yay. It was well, you'll figure it out. We'll figure it out because it was important to me. Therefore, it was important to him. And it wasn't, I'm not the person who's just going to give up and say, oh, well, whatever, woe is me. It's going to work. That's my mindset, whatever that may be that I'm working towards. But that was really important because there's a lot of people that I am no longer in touch with. Mm-hmm. And I always say that if I'm shining so bright that it's burning your eyes, or if I'm too positive that I'm too much for you, then please delete me on social media, because my social media is really positive. I don't get people coming on and like complaining about things or like political this or religion this. Like,
same.
Seriously, I used to see that a lot. And it's funny because in the last 5 years, wow, it's so weird once you surround yourself with positive, like uplifting people who are like, someone puts something positive and everyone's like, yay, there's no jealousy. There's no, oh, this person thinks they're better. No, we're in this together, and it's a positive environment, a positive culture. I think that is one of the most important things that I could say to anyone. It, if you can't find the toxic person around you, ask yourself, is it you?
Fair question. And I think you do speak to the difficulty of that, because sometimes when we are in a growth spurt like that, it's often people that we're closest with that have a lot of trouble dealing that you may be living your life differently, or this mindset shift, or the old adage, like, you've changed. And you're kind of like, yeah, I am changing.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that's the point. And oftentimes when you do have that discomfort in a relationship, or you can feel that separation, it's truthfully a lot of times the other individual maybe is seeing a reflection of where their blind spots are, where they might
Mhm.
want to work on, and they might just not have the space or capacity, or they mentally might not think they have that, because I think everyone has the space and capacity. It does take work, though, to change mindset. And that's why I was so curious about that question, because it is impressive to go from the depths. There, just like you say, there's a saying that you've taken with you. I had a similar event. I went through something quite traumatic when I was 17, and I was at a school assembly, and the presenter said, you can either use bad things in your life as the excuse to fail or the reason to succeed. And I know that's a common saying, but it's one of those things. Take something like that in your bucket, and when you do lose your way in life and you can remind yourself of that mantra that's a fiber of what you want to accomplish, hell yes, it's going to
Mhm.
take you there. You know this well, because now you have your own famous mantra that you've taken around doing motivational talks. Of course, you have your Two Fit Crazies and a microphone podcast. So talk to me through post 30, the mindset shift, all these little milestones that you started to create yourself, because you've had a hugely successful business mind along with your fitness journey once you ditched investment banking and English teaching.
Oh my gosh. Well, to go back really fast, the other thing I want to mention is that um, when I'm going through these dark times, I did have people to talk to. Like, there were, yes, I think that it's really important when we think of our mental health. Like, yes, I did go to a psychologist for a little bit,
Yeah.
and went through that, and I did take some medications to help me through some of those dark times. So I
All
just think
brave
some,
steps. All
which
brave
are,
steps.
sometimes people put a stigma on that,
Mhm.
and I think, no, there's points in people's lives where you don't know, and you may need that. I think that's important to mention, because sometimes people are
Totally.
like, oh well, you did it on your own, and I'm like, no, I needed help, and to get through that really tough time. Yeah, you know what, it was one of the best things ever.
To
So I
piggyback
just.
on that quickly as well, I truly believe that if you have the ability, because I get there can be financial
Mhm.
blockades depending on what route you want to go, but therapy is incredible at any stage in your life. Even, to be honest, I find sometimes there's even higher value when you feel clear, because you're actually
Mhm.
able to goal set and set intentions and work with somebody that's a professional that can kind of tap into your special features, as I like to call it. But continue.
Well, and why do we have business coaches? And why do we have mindset coaches?
100%.
And what, like, it's the same idea. It's, maybe we're not talking about your depression, or moving forward, but we're talking about, catapulting your career, putting your foot on
Mhm.
the gas pedal. And, for me, I always loved fitness and wellness. And one of the keys, when I was younger and I would go to conferences, like as an attendee, because I was a, enthusiast. I would always see people that fascinated me. Like, I remember walking in and seeing, Lawrence Biscontini, who's, kind of well known in the fitness world. And I took his class called Yo Chi, and I was like a fly in the wall in the back. And I just thought, he's in his white garbs and he's presenting. And I loved the way he presented. I loved the way he made his audience, clients feel. And his teaching style was great. So, over the years, I would befriend these people that I thought were really good. And it was honestly sitting down over the years, not as Christine representing this fitness company or being a master trainer for this. It was Christine Conti having a glass of wine with said presenter or whatever. And we didn't talk about fitness, talk about family, you talk about travel, you talk about everything. I love people, I love relationships. I could talk to a telephone pole if you need to. That's just who I am. So I developed all these relationships over the years from when I was like 20 on, so that when I was, diagnosed and decided I want to go fitness full time, I want to actually LLC and trademark my own ideas that I've had for 20 years that I just never had the courage to do. Once I got sick, I was like, well, shit, like, what am I afraid of? What am I waiting for? Because if I thought to myself, if I don't take this risk and chance now, I will regret it for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
I could always go back to teaching. I could always go back to business. My education is never going to go away. But this could be my only chance to do what I love. And I went for it. And what I decided was to call on all of these people, these relationships I'd made over the years of just sitting down and having a glass of wine and having a conversation or whatever, and showing up and being present and caring. Just, hey, you have friendships now. And I decided all the people that I hadn't had time to speak to because I was too busy teaching or coaching, I was going to, part of my bucket list is meet with all these people. So I started making phone calls. Hey, I'd love to have coffee with you. I'd love to jump on a call with you. I'd love to. And it brought me to this guy who's like lives a mile away from me, who's this great runner, has a great backstory as well, and now has been one of my best friends and my podcast co-host. I said to him, I was like, you know what, Brian? I'm like, I'd love to create a podcast one day. And he's like, let's do it. Just like that.
Right
And that
on.
was it. Because I had seen all of these amazing companies and fitness people that didn't have billions of dollars for marketing, had great ideas, no way to get them out. And now, just like you're not going up to someone and saying, hey, give me money for blah, blah, blah. Or you're saying, hey, I would love to feature you and tell your story to my people or get it out to the world. That person is like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And you are getting a show. It's going out to your audience. And guess what? It's going out. You're using my network too. We both win. And that led to, hey, I'm going to write some courses, or it gave me an excuse to reach out to all these people that I didn't really have an excuse to talk to. And now it's been 6 years, and the ability to literally sit down and have these amazing conversations with these top people that I just reached out to people after that I knew that were fascinating to me. And, I'll say the same thing to you. Like if I've had a guest and you're like, oh my gosh, I'd love to, you can go up to them and be like, oh my gosh, I was just talking to Christine and she was on my show and you were on a Fit Crazy. I'd love to have you or connect. Like it was just taking the world and realizing that relationships were so amazing. And since then, podcasts, like it gave me the confidence to write my book of all of these amazing people that inspired. And, it's not just about me, all these other stories, to write courses, to go out and speak, to share my story with people that maybe, just maybe it could help realize that they can do things themselves. So, now I've partnered up. I have a Reinventing the Woman International
Yes,
group.
I saw that and I was like, yes.
We take people on retreats all over the world, and they're all different, not just fitness people, like doctors, lawyers, like attorneys and business owners, and just getting people to get authentic relationships, connecting people with what they need. It just, on and on it's a journey. And it's some days I'm like, yeah. And other days I'm like, oh my gosh, to this day. But if that is the key. And like when I wrote my book, the subtitle is, what if your fears were the key to your dreams? And if that's true, what is it that you're afraid of? That's what you're supposed to be doing.
For you, as you take this brave step into all these new avenues that you hadn't really played in before, I know that we often deal with fear of failure, but on the flip side, especially when you're doing something public facing, have you ever battled with the fear of success?
Oh yeah. I'm like, how do? Yeah. It's I get yelled. I have a really good group of people around me. I have great friends. I have good, I always say, I've got my husband, but I've got really good friends that are really, very smart professionals that can kind of they keep me grounded. And, someone that does my marketing and publicists and, all of these different people that, will say, all right, Christine, like this is a really big deal, or this, you're fine. You're good with this and focus on this. And I just got yelled at actually this week, which is hysterical because I grew up with a mindset. I grew up with a mindset that, you're never enough, right? Like it's like whatever it is that you do, there's always someone that's going to be doing it better. Or it's hard to, people have said, what have you done? Have you realized the magnitude of your award? Have you had a chance to just breathe and take it in and say like, wow, this is awesome? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Now I have to do this, and now I have to do that, and now I do blah, 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 like in the press releases and whatever. And a good friend of mine that does some marketing for me, and she's like, Christine, I need you to take a step back. She said, I understand that you have all these things. She said, and she's like, have you always been like this? Have you always been like, what's the next thing? And not really taking the moment to appreciate what you have. And I said, well, but, and she's like, no buts. She said, I want you to take a moment. And I think this is really good for anyone. Take a moment and look at your resume. Like just right now, pretend that you didn't do anything else. You have nothing else planned. Look at your resume. Would you be impressed, or would you hire yourself? And I was like, fair enough. And I think it's really interesting because you battle that, where am I? And someone had said to me right after the award, they're like, all right, Christine, so now that, this is like the Super Bowl of fitness, now what? And I'm like, oh, like wrong person to say it to, because I'm like, oh, because it is always a what's next. And I feel like, you check the boxes, and for many people, it's like, all right, well, podcast, it's like former business and communications in this, check, right? Family, check. Podcast, check. Book, check. Award, check. Like, you go down the list, and, struggles, check. Overcoming, check. Like, where do you, what's the next thing? Because I never settle. It's like, how can I better help the world? Because I feel like with Spider-Man, great power, great responsibility. I feel like with this award just gives me more influence, more people to reach. And that's how I feel as an advocate for people with chronic diseases or mental illnesses or anything, or just people that feel like they can't and they're stuck, and they'll always be stuck in wherever they're at. That is my goal, is the bigger picture. So kind of using, I trip over myself because people say, hey, what's going on? What's new? And I'm like, oh, nothing. I do it because I don't like to talk about myself.
It's common.
Bigger. I always see something bigger, if that makes sense.
I think the thing that's really incredible about your story, though, because I get it, destination addiction is something that we can subscribe to. And especially if you're somebody that's been hungry and ambitious, you started out as an athlete basically at 4 years old. So it makes a lot of sense. And then you add to that, I'm sure, because you took such a big leap, whether you were conscious of it or not, there was more than likely that mental pressure inside of, I will do this. Any naysayer was probably a lot of fuel to be like, oh, I'm going to go where I said I'm going. And then I'm going to run 100 kilometers past that kind of thing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But what the beauty is, though, and what I'm hearing from you there, is that you are so tied to this underlying why and purpose. That's why you keep propelling on to all these levels. Your influence will grow, the ripple effect will grow, the positivity will grow exponentially. I am going to make you get uncomfortable and talk about yourself, though, in this way, because at IDEA, Fitness Instructor of the Year, massive deal. Talk me through the experience getting up on that stage in front of your peers and really taking in everything that people were putting out to you.
I have to tell you that so I knew a month before, like 4 weeks before. I knew I was presenting an idea. And it was, I got this, I'm sitting at my computer and I got this email come through and it was like, congratulations, whatever. And I'm like in the middle of work, right? And I'm like in the middle doing 100 things. And I'm like, it's probably some, congratulations, like you've got 5% off, like a fitness thing, like we all get this spam, right? So I'm sitting at my computer and, and I pull up the email and I read it. It was like, congratulations, you're blah, 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 blah. And I went right on. Like I didn't even process like what it was. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And I went back and I'm like, and I read it and I read it again. And I'm like, maybe I'm reading this wrong. Like maybe I'm misreading this, and I'm like, nah, I think it says that I won. Like, I'm like, so, and of course, like I called my husband and I was like, he was so nice that night. And of course you can't say anything because it's like, you want to be there. They want to make sure that you're there, So, yeah, of course I was like, oh my gosh, my head was like exploding. And, he came home that night. He had flowers for me and a little
good man
champagne bottle, like really good. And I took a little video of that night, which I couldn't say anything, but, so leading up to this, I knew I had to give a little speech and whatnot. And, I knew I kind of couldn't think about it. Like I had to push it away because like it was too much to, and I'd written a couple things and gave some drafts to my husband. And also I told my, very good friend, my business partner, Lisa, who's also an author. And my husband was just like, yeah, no, nope. You can rip any page out of the book you wrote and it'll be better than what you just showed me. My friend Lisa was just like, I agree with your husband. I'm like, oh, geez, right?
Those are good people to have in your life.
Yep.
You hate them at the time though.
It had to be done. Like I had to vomit on the page, like in order to move forward. But, the big thing is that, you could stand up there and you can thank, different people. You could list names and you could stand up there and talk about, hey, I did this and I did that and I am this and I work that. Or you could tell people who you are and really give them a good indication of you as a human being and why. And like you said, what's the why? Walk you through it. And, many people went up there and with speeches written, and I went up there with 4 bullet points because I know my story. I know who I am and I know why I won that award. And that's the one thing, I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, I'm so surprised. I worked my ass off in the industry, not because I wanted fame, not because I wanted an award, not because I knew I was going to make $1 billion, which is still coming yet, right? But because I know that this is my purpose in life. And I'd mentioned that, when I got up there, I said, your goal in life is to find your gift. Every single one of us in this room has a gift. Some people never find it. Some people never realize it. Or they bury it. I said, I knew that my gift was getting sick and then overcoming the fear of a life that could be terrible, or it could be what I make of it. And I know that this is my purpose in life, is to share my gift of inspiring people, of yes, you canning people, to loving people until they love themselves. It's not just about, hey, my little piece of town. It's, I want to make waves. I want to make ripples that make waves that make a freaking tsunami in this world and lead to bigger changes with the World Health Organization or with government, or that's where I'm at.
And it sounds like we have similar life philosophy. I have a promise to myself. I refuse to live the same day twice. It just seems awfully boring to do it any other way. But we have to be an active participant if we want that mindset. So it's people like you that spark that in somebody else. So before I let you go, I know that you are full of wonderful, inspiring sayings, but what's a last little motivational nugget of wisdom you'd like to leave us with?
I think number one is that one day, I think all of us have to sit back and think about that one day you may not be able to do this, whatever this means to you. But today is not that day. So that every time I, do something that scares me, anytime that I make that phone call or sit on a business meeting or a marketing meeting and I doubt myself, or I sign up for a race or raise money for charities. This is going to be, I ran my 10th Boston Marathon in a row this spring. And the first time I qualified, and I was never a runner. I didn't start running until I got sick, because it helped clear my head, helped get me into the right mental space. And I remember that, that first race, I swore to myself that if I am healthy enough to do this, I will continue to run the Boston Marathon every year. And I started raising money for charities. And at the end of every race, I lost my father before he ever saw me run. And he was a huge motivation to me. And every race that I finish, when I cross the finish line, I give him a high five. So for me, when I get ready to do something that scares me, that I know that at the end, I always give him a high five, because that was something that really was special to me. So again, at the beginning of something, one day I'm not going to be able to do this, but you know what? Today's not that day.
Christine, truly, I hear your travel schedule. And so I just want to say a heartfelt thank you for carving out an hour of time for this Canadian over here.
Oh my God. Like in my podcast, we love our Canadians. We love our neighbors to the north. Amazing. And I will promise that I will return the favor and get you on our airwaves at some point this fall.
You've just listened to All Things Fitness and Wellness. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World. Your fitness, your way. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss out on hearing from industry thought leaders and influencers. We are on a mission to help everyone live a life fit and well.